It's time to get started. If you've decided to utilize a physical server, desktop, laptop, or VM as your test server, then you'll need to go through the installation process to set up Ubuntu. Don't worry, it's very easy to do, and it might even be easier than you'd think, as there are fewer overall steps in the process when compared to older versions. If you've instead opted to use a VPS or Raspberry Pi, you won't need to go through this process, as VPS providers do this for you, and Raspberry Pi has a different setup method altogether. We'll cover this later in the chapter, in the Installing Ubuntu on a Raspberry Pi section. Assuming that you've decided to use a device that does require going through the installer, we'll need to download Ubuntu Server and then create bootable installation media to install it. How you do this largely depends on your hardware. Does your device have an optical drive? Is it able to boot from USB? Refer to the documentation for your device to find out. It's recommended to utilize a flash drive for the installation, if you can, preferably one that uses USB 3.0 or higher, since you'd benefit from its faster speed compared to USB 2.0. The reason for the preference for using a flash drive is due to the fact that they are typically faster than a DVD. However, if your device is older, you won't have a choice, as legacy devices are not able to boot from USB at all. As a general rule, use a flash drive if you can, and opt for a DVD only if you have no choice. In the past, Ubuntu Server ISO images could be used to create either a bootable CD or DVD. Nowadays, writable C disks don't have enough space to support the download size. Therefore, if you choose to bootable optical media, you'll need a writable DVD at a minimum. Unfortunately, the differing age of servers within a typical data center introduces some unpredictability when it comes to how to boot installation media. When I first started with servers, it was commonplace for all standard rack servers to contain a 3.5-inch floppy disk drive, and some of the better ones even contained an optical drive. Nowadays, servers typically contain neither. If a server does have an optical drive, it could potentially go unused for an extended period of time and become faulty without anyone knowing until the next time someone goes to use it. Some servers boot from USB, others don't. 2. Continue. Check the documentation for your hardware and plan accordingly. Your server's capabilities will determine which kind of media we'll need to create. Regardless of whether we plan on creating a bootable USB or DVD, we only need to download a single file. Navigate to the following site in your web browser to get started: https://www.ubuntu.com/download server. We're going to download Ubuntu 22.0 for LTS by clicking on the option to manual server installation button. Next, you'll be offered one or more versions of Ubuntu Server for download. As of the time this chapter was being written, Ubuntu Server 22.0 is the latest version and is shown as the primary download option. There may be other versions of Ubuntu Server listed on this page, such as 22.10 and 23.04, depending on when you're reading this. New releases of Ubuntu are published every 6 months. However, this book only covers the long-term support LTS release, due to the fact that it benefits from 5 years of support. By comparison, non-LTS versions or interim releases are only supported for 9 months and are therefore not an appropriate choice for production servers. Organizations don't typically utilize non-LTS releases at all, except for testing upcoming features prior to general availability. So for our purposes, we'll stick with the LTS version. Once the download is completed, we'll end up with an ISO image we can use to create our bootable installation media. If you're setting up a VM, then the ISO file you download from the Ubuntu Downloads page will be all you need. You won't need to create a bootable DVD or flash drive. In that scenario, all you should need to do is create a VM, attach the ISO to the virtual optical drive, and boot it. From there, the installer should start, and you can proceed with the installation procedure outlined later in this chapter. In the Installing Ubuntu Server section, going over the process of booting an ISO image on a VM differs from one virtualization solution to another, so detailing the process with each would be a very difficult task. Thankfully, the process is usually straightforward and you can find the details within the documentation of your hypervisor. In most cases, the process is as simple as attaching the downloaded ISO image to the VM and then starting it up. If your device does not support booting from USB and you find yourself needing to create a bootable DVD, the process is typically just a matter of downloading the ISO file and then right-clicking on it. In the right-click menu of your operating system, you should have an option to burn to disk or some similar verbiage. This is true of Windows, as well as most graphical desktop environments of Linux, where a disk burning application is installed. The exact procedure differs from system to system, mainly because there is a vast amount of software combinations at play here. For example, I've seen many Windows systems where the right-click option to burn a DVD was removed by an installed CD/DVD burning application. In that case, you'd have to first open your CD/DVD burning application and find the option to create media from a downloaded ISO file. As much as I would love to outline the complete process here, note to Windows PCs typically ship with the same CD/DVD burning application. The best rule of thumb is to try right-clicking on the file to see whether the option is there, and, if not, refer to the documentation for your application. Keep in mind that a data disk is not what you want, so make sure to look for the option to create media from an ISO image or your disk will be useless for our purpose. At this point, you should have an Ubuntu Server ISO image file downloaded. If you are planning on using a DVD to install Ubuntu, you should have that created as well. In the next section, I'll outline the process of creating a bootable flash drive that can be used to install Ubuntu Server.